Good morning. This is Peter Chris from Barack. It's great to see so many of you attending our webinar today. Just like to run through the schedule for our webinar. First, we've got our co-founder and CEO, Omar Yacoub, is going to be welcoming you officially. Then we've got Ricky Margolis from Bogicalis, Managed Security Services Director. He's going to be talking about the decryption problem. We then have Rob Hale, who's the Security Segment Leader for Amazon Web Services, discussing the cloud security. Then we have James Barrett of Endace, the EVP of Sales EMEA, talking about our integration with Endace. And then two of my colleagues, Silvestre and Ryan, will talk about the meta detectives, and then we'll have some questions. With questions, please can you send your questions using the chat box and name the person the question is meant for. We have a few minutes at the end for the questions. The other option for you is if you have a question, please email me, peter@barac.io, with your question and the name of the person you'd like to answer your question, and we'll email it to them and make sure you get a response. With that, I'd like to introduce Omar Yacoub, our CEO and co-founder, to welcome you all, and then we'll kick off the webinar. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Omar Yacoub. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Barack. Thank you for attending this webinar that we're doing about encrypted traffic. Just quick background on Barack. Barack was created in 2017. We come from an AI background, so we had to deal with a lot of projects as a consulting in the AI field and the big data fields, and we decided to create Barack to help organizations being more safe and being able to detect attacks on encrypted traffic instantly and in real time. And since 2017, we've been growing. We are a London-based company based in the UK, but we have an office in Boston, an office in London, an office in Paris, and an office in Tunis. We are now more than 50 people worldwide, with a couple of millions revenue, and a growing number of leading organizations are using Barack now to help them secure the infrastructure and secure their encrypted traffic. With no further ado, I'll leave it to the guys so they can explain what we do. And if you have any question, please don't hesitate to send it to Peter, and we will try to respond as soon as possible. Thank you all.
Great, thanks, Omar. So I'd like to introduce Ricky, who's going to talk about the decryption problem. Thank you, Ricky.
Thanks, Peter. Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm just going to take you through a quick presentation on the problem in the industry and what we're finding. And I run a cybersecurity division for a large system integrator, and that system integrator has been implementing solutions around the world. And one of the, sorry, if we could just go to the next slide, that'd be useful. Thank you. One of the issues that we found was when your estate gets infected, because everyone's going to get infected as the threat landscape evolves, specifically because it's really difficult to track down these infections, and people work from all over the place. And once the organization gets infected, then we need to figure out where the entry point was. We need to figure out what transport mechanism was used, how was it stored, how was the kill chain initiated, and it's really difficult to figure this all out because everything's becoming more and more encrypted. We actually worked out that more than 50% of all the traffic is now encrypted, and previously where we could just fire up a session with Wireshark or something like that, we could see the traffic and we could quickly trace it down, but those days are quickly getting numbered, and there's fewer and fewer ways that we can troubleshoot. What we found was that the threats were entering through email, websites that users are visiting, and a lot of those websites are encrypted. They use TLS or HTTPS, and users will click on a link, download an update, and those downloads basically infect the machine. And some of them are even now coming through file sharing, so Office 365 and Dropbox. And again, those connections are encrypted, so it's really difficult to track these down. Once they're on the device, they use the network, so the so-called roads, to spread. And a lot of our customers ask us, can you help us as a managed service provider to limit down these infections? What can you do to isolate these infections? Can you manage our roads? Can you manage our networks, basically? And in the old days, it was quite straightforward because we could just see on the flat network where the traffic was. But now that it's encrypted, we can't see into that traffic very easily without the right tools. So these networks are very difficult to monitor, and especially because it's all tunneled now, and the encryption is making it difficult. So how do we manage the encrypted traffic so that we can reduce the organization's exposure? So if we flick over to the next slide, I'll take you through what we're looking to do. Basically, what happens when the vulnerability is exploited, then we find that the threat, whatever the threat is, takes advantage of the environment. It pretty much infects a machine through a vulnerability, exploits that vulnerability, and then the first thing that the ransomware tries to do is anchor itself in the system. And by anchoring itself in the environment, what it tries to then do is become persistent. And the organization is then used to spread the Trojan. In some cases, it's emailing out to customers' contacts. It's taking over domain controllers. It's deleting backups, but it's using the internal resources to spread. And most of these pieces of malware are relying on encryption for stealth. So what they're doing is they're using the built-in encryption on the machine and on the so-called roads, on the networks, for stealth. And that's how they spread. Now, they rely on the stealth that's being provided by the internal infrastructure, and that makes it very, very difficult for us to troubleshoot as a managed service provider. But there is one catch, and that's the pattern. So the pattern is visible, and if you have the right tools, you can then see the visibility. And that's where we heavily rely on a tool like Barac. And we'd speak to the Barack guys and say, hey, do you guys have a solution for this? And all of a sudden we have X-ray vision into the environment. And it's patterns we're looking for. We're not interested in the data. We're just trying to stop the threat. So if we move over to the next slide, I'll take you through the incident response and the attack anomalies. So what we found was when we were responding to incidents, because these incidents are occurring many times a week, we have several of them actually ongoing now. The incident response team need the right tools to respond. They need to know that the environment is now clean. They need to understand if the environment's still under attack. They need to understand if the environment is still vulnerable. So the same vulnerabilities that we use as the entry point into the environment, are they still there? And are the issues escalating? So for instance, if you get attacked by some malware, and then people connect via remote access Trojans to your environment, can they still get access to your environment, and are they still in your system? So what's the solution that we turn to? If you go to the next slide, I will take you through that. We then contacted Barrack. We looked through the encrypted traffic, and we then had visibility of things that were previously invisible to us. And that invisibility meant that we couldn't actually quickly isolate and remediate the issue. And our main objective when a customer is under attack is to isolate and deal with the threat where it lies. So we have to find the threat and then deal with it. We can then determine if the threat was clean. So we can, through having a technology like Barack, we're able to see that the environment was no longer infected and that it remained cleaned as well, because reinfection is always something that's very possible, especially if you imagine that a machine has been infected because it had a vulnerability, and the organization wasn't ready for it, they'll just re-image the machine with, believe it or not, they'll re-image it with the same code that they had it imaged previously, and then try and patch it rather than updating the ISO or the gold code. And that means that they just get reinfected. So there's what this tool allows you to do is see if the reinfections were occurring, and also find out if the malware is still communicating on the environment through encrypted means, or the hackers. So hackers, when specifically with ransomware, what they do is they VPN back into the environment, and they actually monitor the infection and manage the solution so that they can demand a ransom. They're actually sitting in the background monitoring the environment. And the ransomware could still be lurking just to reinfect the machines a few hours after you've done the cleanup. And by the way, these cleanups take forever to do. We've been involved in an incident whereby it took us 6 months to clean up 40,000 devices, and it was just so challenging because these 40,000 devices are globally spread out. And once they get infected, it's really difficult to pinpoint. So as you clean one, it gets reinfected and so on. And then this tool has helped us quite immensely. We then identify which traffic is likely to be the malware, and then we focus on the remediation. And this gives us the way to manage the traffic flows. So that's the idea behind this. So if we're able to manage the traffic flows, we're able to understand where the threats are. If we just go to the next slide. Thank you. I'll basically highlight this as a very simple problem that we're solving with this tool. We have an incident that occurs as a managed service security provider globally. The customer calls us up. The first thing the customer asks us is, can you help us in this incident, to manage the incident, to do the incident response for this incident? We say yes, and then we are stuck with a problem that everything's encrypted. The traffic is highly encrypted. So how do we solve the issue? We get a tool. That's one of many tools that we use to identify anomalies in encrypted traffic, and then we can isolate and remediate. And without that tool, our job is immensely harder. And this applies to large organizations and also to small organizations. It doesn't matter. We've worked on incidents with 40,000 devices to customers with 300 devices, and the tool is still relevant across all of those. So thank you very much for listening to me. I'll hand over back to Peter.
Great, thank you, Ricky. And I'd like to introduce Rob Hale from Amazon Web Services, who'll be discussing cloud security. Thanks, Rob.
Good morning, everyone. Really interesting, Rick. Thanks for that. So my name's Rob Hale. I run the security segment in EMEA for Amazon Web Services. What that essentially means is I'm one of a large team responsible for creating customer solutions that integrate native tools that customers are using in the cloud, and also partner solutions that mean that customers can run workloads very securely in the cloud without issues. So hopefully this will work, and I'll be able to control the slides. But there we go. So kind of the biggest challenge really in security is this. In the old world, companies had a choice. They could either move fast or they could stay secure. As we move to cloud and the rapid adoption of transformation, digital transformation, what we actually find is that companies need to be able to move fast and stay secure. And it really isn't a choice of which one they do. They need to do both. So within the cloud, pretty much anybody who uses any shared service or any cloud service should be aware of the shared responsibility model. And this is a model that was pioneered by Amazon, but is used pretty much by every cloud services provider out there, where the platform provider, AWS, for example, is responsible for the security of the cloud. So that's the hardware, the underlying infrastructure, and a hypervisor. And above that, the customers are actually responsible for their security configurations in the cloud. And as part of that, they can use native tools. They can also use partner tools as well. Amazon takes security extremely seriously. In fact, the very first tool that any customer interfaces with when they sign up for an AWS account is actually our security tool. It's the IAM platform. So it links into security groups. So you can set permissions and roles, etc. And that's the very, very first tool you interface with. We use various different methods to ensure security and integrity of the platform, and our customers can then use some of those frameworks like NIST, for example, the CIS benchmarks, to create secure environments within the cloud. One of the main things that when I talk to customers that is absolutely key is that when they move to the cloud, they can actually increase security. And one of the biggest areas around this is a number of controls. There's 210, and I suspect with our annual reInvent conference coming up in just over a week's time, there'll be even more announced, but there's 210 distinct security and compliance and governance controls within the AWS cloud currently. And if I kind of map those out in terms of where customers are deploying, there's obviously issues around data protection, including encryption, managing those encryption keys, certificates, etc. Identity and access management are critical within the cloud. Detective controls and management, i.e. knowing what's going on, detecting potential incidents, and then the network security issues that most infrastructure people are familiar with. If I take you through just a few of those and sort of tools that customers are actively using in the cloud. So one of the first pieces is around detection. And we do that on the cloud, in the Amazon cloud, with GuardDuty. It's an artificial intelligence-based tool that looks at account behavior within the cloud. So, for example, if we see some privileges being escalated on an account, that account then being used to spin up a number of instances in a region that hasn't been used before, and those instances are all running at 100% CPU. That's clearly outside of the behavioral norms for that customer and that account, and that's something we can then flag up, enrich with further threat data from external sources, our partner community, and then deliver to customers as a prioritized feed of things that they really need to look at today. And that's a real world example of a crypto mining attack observed in the wild. Obviously, for an attack to succeed, an external attack, you need to have some sort of vulnerability exploited, and that's where Amazon Inspector comes in. So it's an automated security assessment service that looks at the security and compliance of your applications and instances in the cloud, and then gives you the ability to mitigate those. And that's all brought together with services like Amazon Macy, which look at where your data is, where your personally identifiable data is, and actually what that data is. Most organizations struggle at the very first hurdle in terms of knowing what PII is on their systems, where it is, and critically, who has access to it. So Macy looks at your AWS infrastructure, looks at your repositories and finds that data, classifies it, and then also looks at behavior of accounts, identities, and people who have access to that data. So should JBlogs who've never accessed PII before be moving personally identified information into a public S3 bucket? Probably not, and that's something that you want to have a look at. All that information from both native services and partner services can then be combined into a single pane of glass, and we call that AWS Security Hub. And it's really critical to know that all of your security solutions in the cloud are working together. So if you wanted to know what the 5 things were you needed to prioritize today and be able to mitigate them, then Security Hub is a great pane of glass that the customers are using. I mentioned earlier, we have a large number of partners, and we really do value our partner community for extending services and integrating the services that customers are using in the cloud, and Barack being an important member of that family. One of the main issues around that obviously you find when you're moving into the cloud is network visibility. On-premise, it's really easy to get network visibility. You can start up a tap, for example, and get packet capture. In the cloud, that's not so easy. So for a time, we've had VPC flow logs, which gives you very high-level log information about traffic flows. Talking to customers, we really need to go a step further. So we announced something called VPC Traffic Mirroring. So what that essentially is if you imagine a window, you're firing light, or in this case, data at it, most of it's going through, and actually we're taking a reflected ray, which we can filter. So we're filtering out exactly what information we need, and we can do several interesting things with that. One of the main things is that we can then apply that to the cloud in terms of EC2 instances. So we have here just an example, data going in and out of our EC2 instance. Well, actually now we're going to enable a traffic mirroring session, and that's going to then copy all of that traffic to another instance, what we call a monitoring instance. And this is really game-changing in terms of cloud, because now we can look without intercepting the traffic itself and playing a part in that transaction. We can then push that traffic to a build your own traffic analyzer or an open source traffic analysis, or one of our APN partners like Barrett, for example, to actually analyze that data. And this is really critical to maintain a security posture, particularly where best practice says that you absolutely should be encrypting data. Whether that data is at rest or in transit, encrypt everywhere is typically the security best practice. That can create an avenue for hidden security issues that you then need to address. Now, one of the things you don't want to do is to do a load of decryption of that data, because you're breaking your encryption in the first place, and you're giving humans access to data. The other is around cost. So why have we built traffic mirroring? Basically, detection of network and security anomalies. So it gives you the ability to go to a packet level within the cloud. And obviously, by doing that, you can identify blind spots and choke points within your network. And obviously, an encrypted tunnel between VPCs or between instances to anything outside of that tunnel is a security blind spot, unless you're able to look at what's going on in there. So one of the solutions that we're really proud to be associated with is building Baraka Solution on AWS using the VPC Traffic Mirror. So if I look at one of the main principles of security that we use, it's to restrict human access to data. If we can restrict human access to data, then there's very little chance of that data being lost, being put in the wrong repository, and the same goes for cyber criminals being able to exploit it. So we encrypt everywhere. If you're encrypting everywhere, you really need a way, therefore, of looking at what that data is doing, or what is happening inside that tunnel. So I'm going to hand over now back to our friends at Barrack. I just wanted to mention that we'll be at Reinforce later on next year. Reinforce is AWS's security show, a dedicated security event across 2 days, and it's 100% educational. So it's very different to the normal, very glitzy kind of security events that everyone's used for. It would be great to see you out there, and we hope to see a number of you and our partners at Barack out there also. Thank you very much for your time.
Great, thanks, Rob. So Barack has integrated with a lot of different technologies, for example, SIEM technologies, firewalls, and network security products. One of our integrations that we're very pleased about is with a company called Endace, which you may or may not heard of. But I'd like to ask their VP of EMEA, James Barrett, to tell you a bit about the Endace technology and the integration with Barack. James, over to you.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning, everyone. My name is James Barrett. I run EMEA for Endace, and for those who don't know who we are a company that specialises in packet capture. So, really, kind of very much going back to what Rob was just talking about, but rather than cloud focused, it's typically going to be more data center focused. So we're going to kind of cover it from that angle. A little bit about who we are. We've been around for quite a long time. We were incorporated in 2001, and packet capture is what we do. It's nothing else. We're very single-minded, very focused on that capability. We have a great deal of very large customers who use our products to record what goes across their network in order to be able to look into problems when they occur. So you'll have all sorts of security tools that are inspecting traffic and creating events, and then going from that from those events into data that is going to allow them to investigate. I apologize for the background noise. To investigate and solve those problems is really where those customers use us. The way that our products work, and go to the next slide, please. Oh, okay, this is meant to be a build slide, but okay, not to worry. So the way that our products work is that you'd have taps or mirror ports, and you would push data into our Endace probe, capture solutions, and you would store that data and index it and make it searchable. And that allows customers to very quickly get to the data that's pertinent to an issue and to look into it and to solve the problem. At the same time, we have on every probe we have a hypervisor that allows us to run additional tools, and those tools can be from one of our partners like Barrack, or it can be open source, it can be in-house written tools. And the idea of that is quite simply that the functionality of the system becomes very, very agile. If you want to add different tools, take them away, it's very easy to do, and that gives the product a great longevity within networks, because its function can be changed at will. So one of the big issues that's been seen over the last 10+ years is that as we've moved, or as networks have moved to more and more encryption, investigating problems within encrypted traffic is of course trickier. It's not impossible, but it's certainly harder. One of the big problems is actually not necessarily knowing where to start. So if you're capturing terabytes and terabytes of packet data, and if 80–90% of that is encrypted, where do you start your investigation? Where do you look in order to find the problems that may have occurred? So the partnership with Barack offers us offers our customers the ability to have a pointer to where to start those investigations. The way that we would deal with things before our partnership with Barrack would either be to use an SSL decrypt inline tool in order to break out the SSL and send an unencrypted or decrypted stream of data into our probes. There are difficulties with that. It's very difficult to do at scale. There are privacy issues to be taken into account, particularly if employees are using the company network to do their online banking, for example, or whatever it might be. So there's a lot of kind of minefields with doing always on SSL decryption. And the other way is to be able to decrypt traffic where the company owns the certificate. If it's inbound SSL to or any encrypted inbound traffic to a company-owned server, then you have a copy of the certificate. So therefore, you can take recorded data and you can retrospectively apply the certificate to that data and decrypt the traffic. And that's all fairly easy to do, but very difficult to do at scale. So what we need, and what Barack offer, is the ability to point to the traffic that you need to investigate. So you're going to get from the patterns that they identify an event that says this looks like a problem, and you can then take your recorded traffic from your Endace probe, filter down to just the individual session that's of concern, and either look at the encrypted traffic or apply decryption methodologies to that to get into the payload of that data to really kind of get into the bits and bytes. So that partnership really adds a phenomenal string to our bow when we're talking to customers about the whole investigation playbook, if you like, in order that we can really get into the encrypted traffic in a much more meaningful way, and in a much simpler way as well, and a way that is far lower cost, far lower maintenance, a lot easier to implement and to maintain. So it's a great partnership for us. Just lastly, on the back end of our products, you can see there's an API, and that API allows us to integrate with various tools like Seams, like Barack's interface, and our other partners as well. So if you could take a workflow, for example, where Barack identifies a potentially some kind of problem within an encrypted stream. It's going to send that event to a seam of some sort, whatever it might be. It could be QRadar or ArcSight, or pick whichever one you like. And then from within that seam, or as I say, from within Barack's own interface, you can then pivot back to the Endace interface in order to isolate and identify, and then to investigate that specific traffic that's caused that event to occur. that's it from me. So I'll hand back to Peter. Thank you very
Great,
much.
thanks, James. Really appreciate that. So for our final presentation, I'd like to introduce two of my colleagues, Silvestre and Ryan. They're going to talk about the meta detectives. So over to you guys.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Kalish, and I'm the Business Development Manager for Barack. And alongside me, we also have Silvestre da Costa, who's our pre-sales manager. So for this part, we want to show you how Barack do things differently by drawing accurate conclusions from minute observations. And in tribute to Sherlock Holmes himself, we've actually become the meta detectives. So we're using session metadata to detect encrypted threats hidden within network traffic. Now, if we've done this right, this should work. If I click, you may have to click for me, Silvestre. Sorry, it's not working.
No, you should be able to click again.
Let's click again.
There we go.
There we go. Perfect. Great stuff. So yes, but of course, there is nothing more deceptive than an obvious fact, which is why we don't focus on one piece of data or evidence, so to speak. There are many metrics which we analyze, that we collate together for a more solid story. But we'll come on to that a little bit later on with Silvestre for us. So the adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Now, I'm sure you're all aware of the famous detective of the late 1800s. In fact, actually, Holmes is the most portrayed film character in history and is widely regarded as the greatest detective of all time. So given the fact that he's renowned for his proficiency with observation, forensic science, and logical observation, logical reasoning, could he well have been a cybersecurity analyst of today? Who knows? But furthermore, by being able to draw broad conclusions from minute observation, it does make you wonder what his key investigatory technique would be, had he been written in the 21st century. And now for me, I'd probably say he would be using metadata, because it only really equates to 1 to 3% of your total network traffic flow, yet still gives us enough information to be able to detect abnormalities. So let's have a look at the closer inspection of the cyber issue. What is it that we as individuals experience every single day? Well, it's encrypted traffic, and of which is on the increase. Now, yes, initially it is a good thing to be able to secure network connections between 2 points. Unfortunately, however, cyber criminals are leveraging encryption to spoof websites or disguise malicious threats, all with the aim to hide their activity whilst they are on your network. And this is the most popular method for them, as it's the most successful, and their attacks are getting more and more sophisticated, as we all know. But it's not just that, though. Encrypted traffic renders IT managers and engineers practically blind as to what's flowing in and out of their networks. So it's then really left to trust in existing cyber defenses. But we are in a zero trust world, and where anything could well be a threat vector for malicious attacks. So for me, it begs the question: how can your organization accurately detect and stop encrypted threats hidden within your network traffic? Well, the question is out there, but for some, it was not answered, or at least probably not answered in time. And then these are just some recent examples of data breaches whereby variants of malware leveraged encryption to invade detection with great success. So all of these have had customer details accessed, with payment details stolen, transactions intercepted. In fact, one of these data breaches, only 50 of their 11,000 staff members were initially aware of the breach. And that, of course, puts significant pressure on them to investigate what happened and then to reactively put the correct cyber defenses in place. When the news broke out about a week later, it became a massive public blame game that demoralized staff, spent millions on responding to the breach, and security teams were working on 36-hour shifts, which kept the costs piling up. So it's not just the implication, it's not just the fine, it's the implications behind the scenes that really take their toll on organizations if ever they suffer a data breach. So, deductive reasoning on encrypted threats. So, according to Tails, Gartner, and Google collectively, it is expected that 80% of traffic will be encrypted by the end of the year. Content delivery network and cloud service provider Akamai Technologies, they saw 82% of malicious traffic had indeed leveraged encryption, and that was what they've spotted themselves. But for me, what's quite surprising is Gartner. They're normally very neutral. They don't tend to make bold public statements, but they've actually said themselves that the value of network security controls will decrease because of encrypted web traffic blindness. And I think for me, we can safely conclude that having the ability to inspect encrypted traffic for threats is indeed a necessity. So, but there are solutions out there available at the moment. But Silvestre, can you take us through the challenges and the issues that these other methods cause for IT managers?
Absolutely, I can. So yes, there are three main methods which currently address this issue. And the first big one is packet decryption. The second one would be fingerprinting in some sorts, for instance, the JA3 or JA3S. And the last one is metadata, and that's what Barack does. Now, if we look at them individually, if you look at packet decryption, for instance, there is a couple of little issues there. Packet decryption is fine. It works a treat if you don't look at the hardware. If you look at hardware, it can cost you a lot of extra money just to decrypt all the packages. Firewalls can be very, very expensive. We had a company looking at going towards packet decryption, spending 100 million extra just on the packet decryption, which is a lot. There's also said that the decryption is not the best way forward. So Gartner created a document on this, and we'll send that over to you after the presentation, and just have a look at page 23, for instance. There is a lot of other examples as well. Well, what we need to do is look at whitelisting. We look at compliances and all that sort of thing. And you can't, it's also very difficult to be compliant if you do packet decryption. For instance, GDPR states that you not show any of the personal data. If you decrypt, everybody who's got access to that firewall or to the decryption machine will be able to see that. So you're not compliant with GDPR, for instance. Looking at fingerprinting, it's a way that we can sort of look at the packages themselves. We create a hash of that network package with 5 different metrics. But if one of those metrics are changing, so either the certificate's changing or something else in the network package is changing, just like antivirus, we got a good, a bad, and an unknown. But when something changes, it starts to be an unknown again. So it also increases the number of fingerprints quite a lot. And that means that you need to update that. You need to update that database with all those fingerprints. And that also means that you're reactive. You're never proactive. There's a good piece on that as well. So Akamai created a blog post on it. It's in the description here in the link. We'll send you that as well. Metadata doesn't have these issues. We as Barack, we look at the metadata. And that's where we continue to the next slide.
Cool. So, Silvestre, how can my organization detect accurately and stop encrypted threats hidden within our network traffic?
Of course, it's a simple answer. It's Barack. And what we do with Barack is we've got the EDV platform, and that will inspect your inbound and outbound encrypted traffic for malicious threat in real time using only the metadata. So we look at the metadata and we drop everything else. We do not use the payload itself, so we don't have to decrypt. So there's no decryption required whatsoever. And that I find very, very cool. Now, it's not just us who use metadata. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're just making the wheel a bit smoother to run. So, for instance, governments, they're using metadata all the time. I think at the moment with elections coming up here in the UK, they're looking very much in who is trying to conflict in our elections and seeing who is going to, for instance, Russia constantly back and forth, and how frequent is that being done. And then they're going to be looking at a couple of other little things. With Barack, we don't look at just who and when and how frequent. We look at about 200 different metrics on the metadata and on how that metadata is received. So there's a lot of things that we do extra. Now, metadata builds patterns, and that's really what we're trying to look at.
So his name is Sherlock Holmes and ours is Barrack. It is both of our businesses to know what other people don't know. Well, kind of. It certainly is to the case, or to the point. But the malicious threats that we do discover in real time, we ensure we rapidly report and alert you to them via a choice of avenues. So, Silvestre, can you take us through more on our use of metadata and how our platform works?
Yes, absolutely. So if you look at network traffic, there's two kinds of traffic, the unencrypted traffic and the encrypted traffic. If you take a very quick example of unencrypted traffic, it's like a postcard. You've been to a nice place, Blackpool, and you sent a really nice picture on a postcard of the Blackpool Tower, and therefore you can see where it's from. You can actually see what you've done. It's very clear on the backside who it is to, also who it is from, and even the message itself is all unencrypted. So we know when it's done, we know who it's going to, where it's coming from, we can even see the whole message. So that's unencrypted traffic. Taking that same metaphor and going to encrypted traffic, just put it in in an envelope, and with a sealed envelope or a closed envelope, everything inside the envelope is what we call encrypted. But we can still use a lot of the metadata of that envelope. So we can still see where the address has been sent from, not just if they write down a return address, but also from the stamp itself. Who is it to? Needs to be done, of course. How often is it being sent? Is it once? Is it twice? Is it once a month? Is it quite often? Is it handwritten? Is it typed? Is it machine-based? Or is it something which is done quite by itself? Is it a recorded delivery? How big is the envelope? Can you feel through the envelope? Is there maybe a bank card inside? What's the quality of the envelope? How heavy is it? Does it fit through the letterbox? All those kind of things we can see from the outside without actually looking at the encrypted packets inside. And that's really what we're trying to do. With Barack, we can build that solid story. And if you're looking at an example of a sealed envelope, if it's sent to you with Barclays on top and it says, please do not ignore, we can see that there is something different on it, because normally we only get it once a month. We get a letter from Barclays, a same address, the same weight of it, the same return address, everything is the same, except for now it is done during the month, not once a month. It's an extra one, and it's got slightly more density to it, so there's more paper in it. So the conclusion could be that, hey, this is a missed payment, or they're trying to send you some information on insurance or something else. So it's out of the ordinary, and therefore, just from looking at the metadata, we can already build a story saying this is different.
Great, excellent. So we at Barrack also have a unique DNS scoring algorithm which enables us to spot abnormal domain names in rapid time. But however, for this time, I'm going to ask for you guys to help us out. So you should have a voting window pop up any second or imminently. We want you to tell us which of these 10 domain names is the correct one. So so fingers on buzzers or hands on mice, and yes, your 10 seconds to vote starts now. I'll be timing this, Silvestre.
I am timing it, and I'll look at how many people are actually looking at the right one. Shall we end the polling? We've got quite a number of people coming in.
Great stuff.
All right.
Yeah, let's step it there then. So great stuff. So what's so shall we reveal the answer first then?
Yeah, well, we have people looking at it. So 12% say that it's a number 5. 76% say that it's number 6, and we got 6% saying that it's actually number 8. So let's see what the actual answer is. Hold on for a second. And here we go. The actual answer is coming up right now.
There we go. Number 6. So congratulations, everybody that voted number 6. What did you say, 76%?
76% had it correct.
Interesting. So the majority of you did get it, but as we've proven, it is quite difficult to spot. And of course, it took quite a while for us to scan all of these and make sure we've got the correct name just using the human eye. With our DNS scoring algorithm, we can get that in a far quicker and far more efficient as well for us.
Well, how does that work then? So if we're looking at the Baraka solution, we've got two elements to our solution. The first element is the EDV collector. And what we do there is we look at the metadata. We look at all those different bits and pieces for where we can see what's actually happening, who it's from, where it's going to, certificates, the ciphers, the handshakes. We're looking at a lot of different things there. And we take that information, which is collected from a tab, span, or a mirror port. It could sit on a virtual machine. Most of the time we're using on a virtual machine. And the tab or span or mirror port could also be on what we just saw with AWS on a virtual tab. So over 200 metrics are being extracted from the metadata and then sent to the second part, which is our EDV platform. The EDV platform is rebuilding the session we get from the collector. And then using our artificial intelligence, machine learning, the behavioral analytics, what we'll do is we'll create an attack profile based on what we know already, and it's behavioral analytics. So we know what's happening. We don't look at the threat itself. We look at the behavior of the threat. We also look at the analytics of how everything is working on your environment. Based on normally a machine or packets are going 9 to 5 and now at midnight something's starting to change. That's one of the things that we can learn on your own environment. And also we can have input from yourself. So the SIEM, the SOC, they can enter, say this developer is doing something specific and that is good behavior and it looks like bad behavior, but we can change that saying that is good. Then we create a risk score out of that attack profile. And with that risk score, we'll pass that on to, based on your internal processes and procedures, to your SIEM or your SOC. They can then determine what's happening with that event. They can investigate. They can say, hey, what's going on? This needs to be closed down. We need to stop that traffic. Or we can directly interface with your firewall if you need to. We also have a new web interface, very exciting. The new web interface is launching this week, and it's so much nicer. There's a lot of information we can show you there. It's the information, for instance, on beaconing, how much beaconing is going on. We can show you the certificates, when certificates are expiring, which certificates are being used, which countries they're coming from, a whole lot of new stuff. And if you like, we can set up a POC, or we can show you in a demo what it looks like later on. So that's how we then react, and that's how a Breck platform is actually working. Very simple. This can be on-site or in the cloud, whatever you choose.
Excellent.
Elementally, my dear. But what we did is very, very good. So if we're looking at results, for instance, it's we took 400 terabytes of data and we analyzed it from some really friendly people. These were a couple of universities and some very friendly companies that we've been working with. We took their data, we analyzed it very quickly, and then passed it on to a couple of third-party analysts. They checked it over as well, and together we came with these results. So we were very accurate. We had a very low false positive and a very, very quick detection time. What I find very interesting is the 2 false positives only in 30,000 TLS connections. And that's very, very good, I think.
So you know our methods now, fantastic. But Silvestre, can you give us an example of us in action?
Well, of course, I can give you one example. We have a customer in Africa, a financial institute, and what was happening there is they were targeted by the modern time Robin Hood. They're trying to steal money without actually having any money. And the way they were going about it is to send little bits of money and finding exfiltration paths from this institute. And the way they did it was going with really small bits of money, almost undetectable because you wouldn't see it because it wasn't big bits of money, from the African bank to bits and pieces in Eastern Europe. different banks. Now, that by itself is not really special. It became a little bit more special because they were doing this with a North Korean certificate. Well, that raises the threat level already. But with our unique DNS scoring algorithm we have in our systems as well, we also see that it was not a specific bank. It was very looking like a bank, but it wasn't the same one that it actually was trying to be. So we spotted that, we correlate all that information together, we raise that as a very high risk score. And we went back to the financial institute. We said, hey, have a look at these instances. They checked it. They saw that they were unauthorized payments, and they were able to stop the threat. And that's how we can do it.
Brilliant. So thank you very much for that. So yes, we've had a look at why we are unique, why metadata is far easier method of detecting threats and more efficient, of course. And we've had a look at real life case study as well. But we also have here some reviews from 3 key analysts, of which and the recurring words for us really are affordability, accuracy, lightweight, and privacy. And EMA went as far as saying that Barrack ETV is considered an ideal solution for protecting an organization's data. Again, we can send over the links and reviews for this should you wish to read them in full detail, but I can certainly say that we are getting very positive third-party reviews. And this is why huge organizations such as Barclays, EDF Energy and Orange have bought into our solution and are active customers of ETV. So Barac was actually part of the Barclays Techstars Accelerator program back in 2017, which helped to launch the company by offering access to networking events in the financial sector. But it opened a door for Barclays as well. And they bought our solution for their own infrastructure outside of the program, nothing to do with the program whatsoever, because they instantly saw the value of the technology and the return on investment on their security. And it's also interesting that since then as well, Barrack have also been invited to the UK National Cybersecurity Centre Accelerator Programme as well. And that essentially is an elite group of select vendors or solutions that are considered to be key in helping the UK to continuously improve the UK cyber defences as well. So excellent couple of groups we're involved with there. So how can we help? Well, we have cybersecurity technical and sales specialists providing pre and post-sale support across the world. We've got great coverage on that respect. We can arrange one-to-one webinars with you, tailor information based on your infrastructure or your experiences and the issues that you are facing at the moment. We can arrange free POCs or trial licensing for you to test in your own or friendly environments, and we will help you to install it, provide ongoing monitoring, and keep regular contact with you to make sure that you're getting the most from the testing. And then finally, if you are ready to deploy the solution, we will help you with either to do this jointly or completely for you on your behalf as well. So for any help, questions or quotations on that, really, you're welcome to get in touch with me. My details are on the left-hand side under the sales. And if you do have any technical questions as well, you're also welcome to give Silvestre a shout, and his details are on the right-hand side as well. So, great stuff. So thank you very much, guys. I hope you found our session useful and insightful. So I'll now hand back over to Peter.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. I think we've answered some questions on the fly in the chat box. Do we have any more questions, guys? That we can answer?
I had one question popping up here. How is Barack licensed is a question which we like to have answered.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So what we've done with Barack is we've tried to keep pricing very, very simple. We don't really care about data. We've bundled everything into an annual subscription based on a 1, 2, or 3 year license. And the charges are on the number of internal IP addresses. So we make a single charge per IP address per year, and that includes the use of the software, all the servers that you need, all the collectors that you need, annual support and software upgrades, so there's nothing else to pay. And if anybody wants to email me with their infrastructure count, I'll give them a personalized quotation by email.
Perfect. Another quick question is, how quick is Barack? Well, as you can already see from what we're trying to answer here, that is near to real time. It's very, very quick. So there is another solution out there which takes about 10 minutes, sometimes 2 hours to get a response back. Barack does that in as good as real time. There is a couple of other questions being asked either over email or directly in the chat. If we haven't answered your question so far, please send us an email and we'll try to get back to you. And I think that is it for the questions. We're nearly on the hour.
Just one from me. So Angelique's asked several questions by email. Angelique, we'll send you an email response because they're too complex to discuss online. And we'll get you an answer this afternoon, hopefully, from the 3 people that you wanted input from. So from me, Peter Christou, I'd like to thank all the presenters. Great presentations, everybody. I'd like to thank all of you attending the webinar. And please feel free to contact us for more technical information, to schedule your own technical webinar for you and your sales team to discuss a POC, or if you're a partner, to discuss a partnership. Well, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll talk again. Thank you. Bye-bye.